everybody, welcome to my channel.
Benny Andersson, the quiet maestro behind ABBA and beyond. Benny Andersson has never chased the spotlight, but his music has lit up the world for more than half a century. As a composer, producer, and one of the key creative engines of ABBA, he helped craft some of the most enduring pop songs ever written. Yet Andersson's story stretches far beyond glittering jumpsuits and Eurovision triumphs. His career is a portrait of curiosity, discipline, and a lifelong love of melody. Early life and musical roots. Born on December 16, 1946, in Stockholm, Göran Bror, Benny Andersson grew up in a home filled with music. His father and grandfather both played accordion, and by age 6 he was already learning songs by ear. Piano lessons followed, though Andersson was largely self-taught, developing an instinctive feel for harmony and arrangement. That natural musicality would become his trademark. Before ABBA, the Hep Stars era in the mid-1960s, Andersson joined the Hep Stars, Sweden's hottest rock band at the time. Known as the Swedish Beatles, they gave him his first taste of professional music making. Andersson wrote several of their hits, sharpened his skills on keyboards, and gained experience in studios and on tour. Most importantly, he met Björn Ulvaeus, a young folk singer who would become his songwriting partner for decades. The birth of ABBA. By the early 1970s, Andersson, Ulvaeus, Agnetha Faltskog, and Annie Frid Lyngstad had formed what would soon become ABBA. Their 1974 Eurovision win with Waterloo launched them onto the global stage. But it was Andersson's fingerprints on the group's evolving sound that truly set them apart. His love of classical structure, layered instrumentation, and melodic richness produced songs that felt both catchy and sophisticated. From Dancing Queen to The Winner Takes It All, Andersson helped craft hooks that seemed to shine from within. His arrangements often blended disco, folk, and European pop with a sense of emotional storytelling that has kept ABBA's catalog evergreen. After ABBA, reinvention and reinvention again. When ABBA paused in 1982, Andersson didn't slow down. He and Ulvaeus began experimenting with theater music, eventually creating the hit musical Chess, featuring the global hit One Night in Bangkok and the cult classic Anthem. Their later work on Kristina Fran Duvamala showcased Andersson's more classical sensibilities, with sweeping orchestration and emotional depth. In the 1990s, Andersson founded Benny Andersson's Orchester, BAO, a group blending Swedish folk, pop, and dancehall warmth. It became one of Sweden's most beloved music projects. He also collaborated on Mamma Mia, the stage musical and film franchise that reintroduced ABBA's music to new generations and turned the group into a cultural force once again. A return to ABBA, a legacy renewed in 2021. ABBA reunited for Voyage, their first studio album in 4 decades. Andersson's compositions carried the same bittersweet glow and finely carved melodies that defined the band in their heyday. With the London Digital Concert Residency using motion-captured avatars, he once again played a major role in blending music with technology. The artist behind the curtain. Despite enormous fame, Andersson has always preferred to let the music speak. He's known for his calm demeanor, deep focus, and a perfectionist streak that has produced some of pop's most finely crafted recordings. Whether writing dance floor anthems, melancholy ballads, folk tunes, or theatrical scores, he approaches each project with the same dedication to melody and emotional clarity. Conclusion. Benny Andersson's legacy is both massive and quietly powerful. He shaped ABBA's sound, revitalized Swedish musical theater, championed folk traditions, and continued creating long after most artists would have stepped back. He's one of those rare composers whose work feels timeless, rooted in craftsmanship and a love for the sheer joy of music. Creative chemistry. The Andersson-Ulvaeus partnership. One of the most fascinating chapters in Benny Andersson's story is his partnership with Björn Ulvaeus. Their dynamic wasn't built on ego clashes or rockstar flair. Instead, it thrived because the two had remarkably complementary strengths. Benny gravitated toward harmony, complex chord progressions, and instrumental textures. Björn excelled at structure, lyrics, and conceptual clarity. Together, they worked with an almost scientific discipline. They would sit at a piano for hours, searching for the perfect melodic line, sometimes recording dozens of demos just to find the moment they both felt was right. Their collaborative process embodied Andersson's meticulous approach to songwriting, patient, methodical, and willing to chase emotional truth rather than settle for something merely catchy. The signature sound. What makes a Benny Andersson composition a Benny Andersson melody is instantly recognizable, even when stripped of ABBA's lush production. He often mixes Scandinavian folk influences with classical flourishes, building harmonies that shift just enough to tug on the listener's heart. His progressions often use unexpected modulations or bittersweet tonal shifts, creating music that's bright on the surface but emotionally complex underneath. It's why songs like Chiquitita, Our Last Summer, and Thank You for the Music land with such lasting resonance. There's joy, but there's also a hint of melancholy. Andersson seems to understand that both feelings can coexist, and that contrast is part of what makes music human. Life after pop stardom. A composer with endless curiosity. Once the world's biggest pop band went quiet, Andersson could have leaned back and enjoyed his status as music royalty. Instead, he raced headfirst into new territory. The musicals he co-wrote, especially Kristina Fran Duvemåla, proved that he wasn't just a pop craftsman. He was a full-fledged dramatist, writing music that required nuance, emotional architecture, and symphonic depth. Bow, his folk-inspired ensemble, shows another layer of his artistry. These songs aren't written for global domination. They're warm, communal, and often touched by nostalgia for Sweden's rural traditions. The music carries the feeling of open fields, summer nights, and dance floors lit by string lights. It's both personal and culturally rooted, and Andersson's pride in Sweden's musical heritage shines through every track. A reluctant celebrity, a devoted musician despite his enormous fame, Benny Andersson has always maintained an air of gentle humility. He rarely flaunts his success and prefers quiet creativity over public spectacle. Colleagues often describe him as kind, focused, and deeply serious about the craft of music. He drinks coffee obsessively, spends long stretches in the studio tweaking arrangements, and treats songwriting as a lifelong puzzle. There's an interesting irony in his career. He became one of the most influential figures in pop, yet he never seemed motivated by fame. For Andersson, music is a daily practice, not a performance. That sincerity is part of why his work connects so broadly. Influence on modern pop and global culture. ABBA's revival in the 21st century. Sparked by late 1990s nostalgia and strengthened by the Mamma Mia phenomenon, has pushed Andersson's music into new territories. Modern artists from Dua Lipa to Kylie Minogue to Sigrid have drawn inspiration from ABBA's sonic palette. Producers often reference Andersson's chord structures and layered vocals as templates for crafting emotionally rich dance pop. Meanwhile, younger audiences discovering ABBA through films, TikTok, and streaming services are experiencing Benny's melodies with fresh ears. The shine hasn't faded. If anything, his style feels more relevant than ever in a pop landscape that is once again embracing big melodies, sincerity, and storytelling. The legacy. Music that lives for generations. Benny Andersson's influence is so woven into the fabric of modern music that it's easy to overlook how groundbreaking his work truly is. He helped define the sound of the 1970s, reshaped musical theater in the 1980s and 1990s, revitalized Swedish folk traditions in the 2000s, and in the 2020s returned with one of the most anticipated reunions in pop history. Through all these eras, the constant thread has been his devotion to melody. Andersson writes music that feels timeless because he treats songwriting as both craft and art. His compositions aren't fads. They're built to last. Inside the studio, Benny's obsession with detail. People who've worked with Andersson often mention the same thing. He can spend an entire afternoon tweaking a single harmony line or adjusting the voicing of a string section. In ABBA's prime, he was known for living in the studio, happy to repeat the same section dozens of times until the emotional balance felt perfect. The group famously built their sound on overdubs, layered vocals, and carefully sculpted instrumental blends. And Andersson drove much of that experimentation. He wasn't chasing perfection in a sterile sense. He was chasing feeling. A chord that lingered a split second longer. A harmony that melted just right into a chorus. A piano phrase that carried a hidden ache. These were the details that mattered to him. His approach elevated ABBA from a catchy pop group to something closer to pop architecture. The piano, his voice as a musician while his studio wizardry is legendary. Benny Andersson is at heart a pianist. The piano is his anchor, his sketchbook, his home base. In interviews, he's often said that writing at the piano is how he untangles his thoughts. The instrument gives him structure and space at the same time. His playing style is distinctive: steady left hand, melodic right hand, a slight folk lilt, and an emotional directness that never feels showy. Listen to the intro of "Thank You for the Music," or the piano lines in "I Let the Music Speak," and you hear a composer who connects directly through his fingertips. Later in life, Andersson released solo piano albums like Piano, 2017, where he stripped famous compositions down to their original skeletons. These recordings are intimate, almost meditative. They reveal how solid his songwriting is even without the layers that made ABBA famous. Personal life, quiet happiness, steady partnerships. While Benny Andersson has never been inclined to overshare publicly, his personal life has been defined by groundedness. He married Swedish singer Mona Norklet in 1981, and the two have remained partners both privately and creatively. They share a son, Ludwig, who has followed in his father's musical footsteps. Andersson has been open about earlier struggles with alcohol, acknowledging that sobriety was a turning point that strengthened his career and family life. His honesty about that period is something fans appreciate. It humanizes him in a way fame rarely allows. Outside of work, he loves horses and owns several trotters. He and his family have long been involved in Swedish harness racing, a hobby that lets him step out of the music world and just enjoy being Benny. The cultural revival of ABBA. Benny at the center. When ABBA stepped back in 1982, none of the members expected the world to fall in love with their music all over again decades later. Andersson, ever humble, has repeatedly said he was shocked at how deeply the next generations embraced the band. The release of Mamma Mia in 1999, followed by the film adaptations in 2008 and 2018, turned into a cultural avalanche. Suddenly ABBA wasn't retro. They were timeless. The musical and films drew millions of new fans. And Benny supervised the arrangements to ensure the heart of the songs remained intact. The 2021 Voyage project was another example of his willingness to innovate. The idea of digital avatars performing alongside a live band could have felt gimmicky in the wrong hands. With Andersson guiding the music and production, it became something surprisingly emotional, a tribute to legacy, memory, and the power of pop. philosophy of music, simplicity, honesty, heart for all his genius. Andersson doesn't mystify his process. He believes good music should speak for itself. He avoids trends, doesn't chase chart success, and prefers writing at his own pace. His interviews always circle back to one idea: music should feel true. He has a particular fondness for Swedish folk tradition, often noting that its melodies carry a purity that resonates with him. His work in ABBA is infused with that warmth, simplicity, and it's why the group continues to draw devoted audiences in Sweden. In a world addicted to constant reinvention, Andersson's philosophy is almost refreshing: keep writing, keep playing, and let the music find its audience. Global honors and recognition over the years, Andersson has received a mountain of awards. Induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with ABBA, a Grammy nomination for chess, numerous Swedish Grammis Awards, the Polar Music Prize, one of the industry's highest international honors, multiple honorary doctorates in music and the arts, but he rarely speaks about these accolades. If anything, he seems amused by them. What matters to him is the craft, not the trophies. A composer between worlds, pop, folk, classical. One of the most interesting things about Benny Andersson is how effortlessly he moves between musical worlds that normally don't overlap. In ABBA, he helped craft glossy, danceable pop that dominated the charts. With Chess and Kristina Fran Duvamala, he created music rooted in classical tradition and dramatic storytelling. With Bow, he returned to folk, dance band warmth, and the swing of Swedish polska rhythms. Most artists pick a lane. Andersson kept wandering into new neighborhoods because curiosity drove him. He has said many times that he writes music he enjoys listening to rather than what the industry expects. That mindset helped him avoid the pressure other global pop figures faced when their era ended. He just kept moving forward, learning whatever new musical language interested him at the moment. Mentorship and the Swedish music boom. Even outside his own work, Andersson quietly helped build the foundation of Sweden's modern music identity. Sweden is now a powerhouse of global songwriting and production, with Max Martin, Redone, Shellback, Robin, and countless others shaping modern pop. Many of these figures grew up admiring ABBA not just as artists but as proof that Swedish musicians could conquer the world. Andersson himself mentored several young Swedish artists, composers, and producers over the years, offering advice on arrangement, songwriting, and how to maintain integrity in a commercial industry. He wasn't the loudest voice in the Swedish pop explosion, but his influences threaded through it like a guiding wire. The emotional core of his songwriting underneath the bright melodies and clean production. Benny Andersson's music often carries a sense of longing. It's not sadness exactly, more like bittersweet memory, the feeling of holding something wonderful while knowing it can slip away. Songs like Slipping Through My Fingers or The Winner Takes It All show this clearly. They're pop songs, yes, but the emotions are raw, almost cinematic. Part of this comes from Andersson's melodic style. He loves unexpected chord changes that bend the emotional tone of a song. A major chord falls into a minor, or a melancholy phrase suddenly lifts. These small shifts create a sense of movement that mirrors life, joy and ache living side by side. It's a big reason ABBA's catalog still hits people so deeply. The music is bright and polished, but the heart underneath is real. Modern projects, creating without pressure in recent decades, Andersson has taken a more relaxed approach to his career. Bow still records and performs, producing songs filled with charm and craftsmanship. His solo piano projects let fans hear the purest form of his writing. When he feels like composing, he does. When he doesn't force it. This freedom gives him a certain glow creatively. He's a musician who made peace with success. He no longer chases global recognition, but he still delivers music that feels genuine and beautifully constructed. His relationship with fans, quiet but appreciative unlike many high-profile artists. Andersson has always kept a comfortable distance from the spotlight. He doesn't seek celebrity status. He isn't active on social media, but he respects the listeners who've supported him. And he's grateful for the love ABBA continues to receive. Fans describe meeting him as warm and low-key. He seems genuinely surprised that people care so much, which is part of his charm. He values sincerity, connection, and humility. And these qualities bleed into every chord he writes. A living legacy. It's rare for a composer to shape global pop, transform musical theater, uplift national folk traditions, and still leave people wanting more. Benny Andersson achieved all of that without theatrics or ego. He built a career on melody, discipline, and emotional honesty. Wherever music goes next, his fingerprints are already on it. The ABBA studio as a laboratory, reinventing pop from the inside. To really understand Andersson's impact, you have to picture the way ABBA recorded in the 1970s and early 1980s. Rather than relying on standard rock band setups, Andersson and his collaborators treated the studio like a painter's workshop. They layered vocals until they shimmered like stained glass. They stacked synthesizers and pianos, doubling lines and shifting octaves to give songs unexpected colors. They used analog gear in inventive ways, combining clarity with warmth. At the center of this experimental swirl was Andersson. He often arrived at the studio with a melody sketched out on piano, then expanded it through hours of tinkering. He had a talent for hearing what wasn't there yet, imagining texture and shape long before the tape rolled. The result was ABBA's signature sound. Something glossy on the surface but built on a foundation of intricate craftsmanship. Songs like Gimme, 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 or Lay All Your Love on Me show this perfectly. They're danceable and fun, but if you listen closely, the arrangements are almost symphonic. Andersson treated pop as something worthy of the same care as classical composition. Chess, a musical ahead of its time. After ABBA stepped aside, Andersson and Ulvaeus decided to tackle something bold, a full-scale musical with lyricist Tim Rice. This wasn't a small side project. They went for a sweeping, politically charged story about East and West, ambition, love, and Cold War tension. The resulting musical, Chess, debuted as a concept album in 1984 and stunned critics with its complexity. Andersson's music for Chess blends pop, opera, and orchestral drama. Anthem remains one of the most powerful theatrical songs of the era, and I Know Him So Well became a massive worldwide hit. While Broadway struggled with Chess in its original form, the show developed a devoted global following, and the music continues to be performed in concerts and revivals. What's striking is how confidently Andersson stepped into a new genre. He wasn't writing 3-minute hits anymore. He was shaping emotional architecture that required patience, tension, and release. And he nailed it. Kristina Fran Duvemåla, a masterpiece of Scandinavian storytelling. If ABBA was Benny's pop peak, and Chess his theatrical breakthrough, then Kristina Fran Duvemåla was his heart poured onto a stage. Based on Vilhelm Moberg's epic novels about Swedish immigrants in the 1800s, the musical is intimate, emotional, and filled with some of Andersson's most moving melodies. The music shows his love for classical tradition. Orchestras swell, folk themes drift through the score, and the vocal lines feel deeply human. It premiered in Sweden in the mid-1990s and became a national treasure. Critics called it one of the greatest Swedish musicals ever made. When the English-language concert version reached Carnegie Hall in 2009, audiences were stunned by its emotional power. Andersson proved once again that he wasn't confined to one genre. He could compose music that carried historical weight and personal vulnerability with equal grace. The return of ABBA. Benny's role in the Voyage era. The reunion of ABBA for Voyage in 2021 wasn't nostalgia. It was a carefully crafted artistic chapter, with Andersson steering much of the musical direction. The album features songs that sound unmistakably ABBA but also reflect decades of growth. There's maturity in the melodies, a gentle sadness woven through the lyrics, and a sense that Andersson understands exactly what listeners cherish about the band. Tracks like I Still Have Faith in You show his continued talent for emotional resonance. The song feels like a conversation between the past and the present, without leaning too heavily on the group's legacy. The digital concert experience, featuring motion-captured virtual versions of the band, was another example of Andersson embracing innovation without losing authenticity. He made sure the live band sounded tight, the arrangements stayed true, and the emotional core remained intact. Why Benny Andersson's work lives on. People talk a lot about ABBA's commercial success, but the real secret to Andersson's legacy is his commitment to melody as storytelling. He writes tunes that feel like they're carrying memories, even when you hear them for the first time. There's honesty in his music, a sense of life lived and understood. He's also one of the few composers who manage to remain relevant across multiple eras without chasing trends. Instead, he trusted his own instincts, and audiences kept returning to that sincerity. Whether you're listening to a disco classic, a bow folk tune, or a piano solo he recorded late in life, that emotional clarity is always there. The Andersson musical mindset, work first, ego never. One of the most consistent threads running through Benny Andersson's career is his attitude toward the work. He's never been a spotlight chaser. Fame doesn't thrill him. What excites him is the puzzle of melody, the craft of putting notes together until they feel right in the gut. People who've collaborated with him say he approaches music like a quiet architect, one who would rather spend a long, uneventful afternoon fine-tuning a phrase than celebrate a global hit. He has said more than once that a song is never truly finished, only abandoned. That perfectionist streak might sound exhausting, but for Andersson it's simply part of the joy. The studio is where he disappears into the process. He loves that focused, slightly obsessive mode where time slips away. It's probably why his melodies feel like they've been carved rather than tossed off. An ear for voices. Working with Agnetha and Frida, a huge part of ABBA's magic came from the blend of Agnetha Faltskog and Annie Frid Lyngsted's voices. And Benny Andersson understood exactly how to write for them. He knew their ranges, their tonal quirks, the way their harmonies wrapped around each other. He also knew how to push them into emotional territory.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.